Oh, we started Mishnah 1?
Mishnah 1. All right. So, good evening, I guess. Well, afternoon by the Jewish clock, evening by the Gregorian clock. So we're going to be talking about the lulav in this chapter, chapter 3 of Sukkot. And that means that we need to do a few little definitions, because I would recommend that we stick to the Hebrew names for the species, because we're going to do half of them in the Hebrew anyway. So let's do what they are in Hebrew. Well, transliteration for the benefit of everyone else. And then we will talk about what we would call them in English so that people could identify them. Okay, so the lulav itself is the term that we use for the whole bundle, but it's also the term used for one part of the bundle, which is a palm. The long, well, we're going to actually find that it doesn't need to be much longer. But it's usually in the modern lulav, the longest part, it is from the palm tree. And as we're going to see, the palm tree is made very specially. It has a ridge down the middle. And usually we see palm trees where all of the leaves have opened up and spread out. When we make the lulav, it is with all of those leaves still attached to that spine. So think of it like a folded up palm tree, except it's not folded up after, it's pre-unfolded is the way to put it. So that's the palm branch. And then we have the arava, which is in English usually called a willow, which we're going to have to talk about precisely which willow it is. And the willow is known for having leaves that are shaped sort of long and thin. And they tend to grow, well, the willows can grow in many places, but these willows we're going to see are growing near the rivers. Doing okay? Okay. And then hadas, I think I'm spelling this right in English, is the myrtle. Which, by the way, if you ever found a lot of older Jewish women who had the name Myrtle, it's because of the name Hadas, Hadassah, right? And then when they translate that to English, they got the name Myrtle. So that's why you end up with a lot of older generation women who have that name. Nowadays, many women get different names.
The Arabic, you have 2 and the Hadas 3, correct?
Yes, right. In terms of numbering, yes. Right. So we've got 1, we've got 2, and we've got 3. In the modern lulav, that is a debate in our Mishnah. We'll get to. And then we have the etrog, which in English you would call a citron, or you could call it a super lemon, because that's what it looks like. Mega lemon, yeah.
How come they don't sell those? Like, I don't ever see those except.
In some European supermarkets, they do, but it's not a part of the American cuisine, the American diet. Yeah, we're lucky to get a lime. What's that?
It's not so tasty.
It's for cooking. It's actually really very good because you you can use the flavor to make a very strong citrus flavor without too much material. So as far as ratios go,
yeah, for salad or cooking.
Like cooking like if you want to get a citrus flavor for a pie, or if you want to make a citrus flavor to add to like fish or chicken, but you just do the zesting.
Yeah.
Etrogim are actually very good for that. I hear. I'm not a cook, but I've heard from people who know how to cook that it's very useful for that. But no, they're not. You're not going to find them in most American supermarkets.
Susan made me some vodka from the etrog sheet.
Which a lot of other people do. Is anything that has sugar in it, you can turn into alcohol. And actually, some people will take like vodka and they'll add etrogim to it. Other people will take the etrog itself and squeeze it and mash it down and use it by itself, only by itself, to make the liquor. And then usually add a lot of sugar. Okay, so and the myrtle, right, 3 branches, and those tend to look a bit more like that. The midrash that people talk about is this looks like the spine, this looks like the eye, sorry, this looks like the lips, I have to remember the right part, and this looks like the eye, and this looks, or at least is the right size, as a heart. Okay, so we're going to talk about what makes a kosher lulav, and we're going to talk about how to use a kosher lulav. That's going to be the bulk of chapter 3. Good? All right, so we got our definitions. Lulav, and we're going to go back and forth between lulav meaning the whole bundle and lulav meaning just the palm, arava, hadas, and etrog. Good? Good. All right, chapter 3, Mishnah 1. Do I have a volunteer to read?
Yes.
Okay.
A stolen or a dried up lulav is invalid.
Right, you cannot do the mitzvah if you steal someone else's lulav. And you can't do a mitzvah if the lulav is dried up. Now, here in this Mishnah, we are talking about lulav, the singular. We're just talking about the palm branch, because this is going to get repeated as a instruction for the other species as well.
But how much dry is dry?
When it's dry, when it's withered. This, what do you, you can't have a hydrometer to test the moisture.
No, because sometimes at the end of Sukkot, it becomes to be very brown.
Hold on to that. We're going to talk about how you preserve your lulav and the other branches before we finish the Mishnah.
But I mean that if it's already kind of brown or everything, that is dry enough or still is so fine.
So that's
why I say
exactly
how much dry is.
So if we keep reading, they give a few more bit more information about each of the species of what we're looking for, and then we're going to talk about preserving them. So, good question to keep in mind.
One that came from an
Asherah
tree or from a condemned city is invalid.
All right, so an Asherah tree is a tree that was worshipped. So the tree was being used as an idol. So people would come to the tree and go, oh, tree, spirit of the tree, blah, 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 blah. You can't just say, oh, excuse me, I need to cut this and use it for my lulav. No, because that would be benefiting from an idol, basically. And then a condemned city is a city that's mentioned in the Torah, that the entire city has given themselves over to idolatry and the whole city is going to be destroyed. You're not allowed to take the branch before the destruction of the city.
But there's no name here, generic city.
Oh, it's any city.
Yes.
Any city that gets condemned, you're not allowed to touch any of the property, even to use it for a mitzvah. Right? Because you might think that, hey, I can redeem this item and turn it from being part of an idol, or turn it from being part of a condemned city, and I'm going to give it a good purpose. And once it's off limits, it stays off limits.
I was happy if there's a change of plan, like Nineveh.
Like what?
Nineveh.
Mm-hmm.
That was planned to be destroyed, and they changed the heart.
That didn't fit into the technical definition of a condemned city by Devarim rules. A condemned city means that you have heard the rumor that it's a Jewish city that was idolatrous, that you have gone, that you have investigated, indeed, the entire city, and there are arguments in the Talmud of whether this was ever carried out. So the question here is more what the Mishnah is trying to teach us in general, that the lulav can't come from a forbidden source.
And what happened after we come to be in the diaspora, if it's not a city, a neighborhood that is full of Jews?
Nope.
Apply the same idea?
Nope. No, the rules are very, very specific. And like I said, the rabbis of the Talmud debated of whether it had even ever been done. So certainly now it would not be, despite some people's wishes. Onward.
If its top was broken off or its leaves were detached, it is invalid.
Okay, so if you snap off the tip of your lulav, right, not the bottom, but the tip, then it's no longer a lulav branch, and therefore it's invalid. And if the leaves have come off, then it's no longer valid. As opposed to part 4.
If its leaves are spread apart, it is valid.
Right, so remember, like I said, the leaves are still sort of stuck, almost with like a little membrane against the center spine. Mm-hmm. If they've begun to open up a bit, it's still a kosher, it's still okay.
If its leaves are spread apart, it is valid.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbi Judah says he should tie it at the top.
All right, so Rabbi Judah's solution is, okay, if the leaves are spreading out, just tie it back up again, and then that's okay.
So that's why we use the thing around the
wrap.
The wrap, that's why in order to catch
to hold everything together, yes, and to make it one unit. And we're going to talk more about that in just a couple Mishnayot.
The thorny palms of the Iron Mountain are valid.
All right, so not knowing much about the agriculture of the Middle East, I had to look at the commentary, and apparently this is a type of palm that comes from an area near Moab, which is in modern-day Jordan. It's actually the Iron Mountains are mentioned by Josephus as well. And apparently this type of palm tree has shorter, sharper type of leaves. But the Mishnah is saying, yeah, even though they're not the regular palm trees, it's still a kosher lulav if that's what you've got. And then
A lulav which is 3 handbreadths in length, long enough to wave, is valid.
okay, so
Very short.
exactly right. 3 handbreadths in length is basically about that long. Right,
It's a
you
lot
could-
shorter than what we usually have.
Half.
It is, right? It's a pygmy lulav
Yeah.
by modern standards. But in the old days, when you didn't have lulaving farms or giant, plantations of palm trees, those might be the only extra ones you had on the tree. And so you would clip off all the ones you could use, and those were what you had. So the rabbis wanted to make sure that it was long enough. And why did they settle on that? Because that's long enough to wave. Right? If it's any shorter, there's no waving going on. It's just a stick
You need also room to catch it.
to hold on to it. Exactly. Good. Mishnah 2.
A stolen or withered hadass is invalid.
All right, so that may sound familiar.
Yes.
We went from talking about the lulav, now we're talking about the hadass, about the myrtle. So same rule, same reasons. Part 2,
One that came from an Asherah or a condemned city is invalid.
also the same rule, same reasons.
If its tip was broken off, or if its leaves were detached, or its,
Same so far.
yeah, or its berries were more numerous than its leaves, it is invalid.
Okay, again, not being an excellent botanist, but having looked for pictures of this, what apparently happens is in the wild, your myrtle has all of its leaves, and the myrtles that we use for our lulavim, you'll notice, have lots of little leaves all the way along the length.
Mhm.
Apparently in the wild, they also get berries. Whether they're actually technically berries or not, I couldn't quite confirm, but they are these little sort of dark buds that are all around along the shaft. If it's got more of those than it has leaves, then it's not kosher.
Okay.
But
But if he diminished them, it is valid.
if you take your branch and you just pick off the berries, you're okay.
Okay. But many not diminish them on the festival.
Sorry, that should be but may not,
Mhm.
right? Meaning you're not allowed to pick off the berries on the chag.
Oh, that's interesting. That part I don't have it.
You don't have that part B?
The part B that you can take out.
You don't?
No. Say berries and number is leaf, it is valid. If he decrease then.
it. That's
Okay.
Yeah, decrease and diminish are the same.
Yeah.
But we may not decrease them on the holiday itself, on Yom Tov.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do that in there.
Right. Well, because you can't do any agriculture on the Yom Tov itself, and you also couldn't be finishing the lulav to make it, or the hadass to make it ready for use. So you got to do it the day before at least, if not when you first pick it. Good. Mishnah 3.
A stolen or withered arava is invalid.
All right. So now we're at the arava, the willow branch. Same rule, same reason.
One take from an Asherah or from a condemned city is invalid.
Same rule, same reasons.
One whose tip was broken off or whose leaves were detached, or a
Satsifa. Right, which is apparently a species of willow that doesn't grow near the river. So this is like a stony willow, not a river willow. And so that species is not permissible. Now, again, this is why we rely on people who have good agricultural skills to know what all of these species actually look like, rather than just going out and picking them ourselves, because there are many, many different types of plants. And some of them are okay from different species, some of them are not. And this particular species apparently was not a good species because it wasn't from the river, which was specifically mentioned in the Torah as being the type of plant that we were using. And
one that was shriveled or had lost some of its leaves, or one grown in rain-watered soil is valid.
right, so even if it wasn't actually at the river, as long as it's the right species of river willow, then it is okay. And then, of course, the shriveled or lost some of its leaves is also okay. And that is actually very important because at the end of the Sukkot, when we do Hoshana Rabbah, we have the custom of beating off the leaves on the willow. If they weren't able to come off, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Oh, I missed that, Rabbi.
What, Hoshana Rabbah?
Yeah.
Well,
Very fun.
because it's the last weekday of Sukkot. the night of which we begin Shmini Atzeret.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I truly have missed it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
It is one of the more physical actions.
You know, you feel the Indians in the movies.
All right, so now we're going to get to the question of how many of these pieces do we do? Because you may remember from reading the Torah doesn't tell us one of this, three of that, two of that. That's Torah Sheba'al Peh. That's the oral law. And there's a bit of a debate in the oral law.
Rabbi Ishmael says 3 hadassim.
Hadassim, yeah.
Hadassim, 2 aravot, 1 lulav, and 1 etrog. Even if 2 of the hadassim have their tips broken off and only 1 is whole.
All right, so Rabbi Ishmael says, do like we do, which is one for the spine, right, 1 palm, 2 willows, 3 myrtle, and 1 etrog. What he adds sort of in parentheses is that even though that's what you should take, if among the myrtles, 2 of them are disqualified, you can still do the mitzvah with the 1 remaining good one. It's better to do it with 3 good ones, but it's the best way and then the minimum way is what he's talking about here. Make sense?
Yeah.
But as we're going to see, Rabbi Tarfon disagrees.
Rabbi Tarfon says even if all 3 have their tips broken off.
It's like, nope, even if those ones are broken, if it's part of the bundle, you're okay. Rabbi Akiva, on the other hand, says,
Rabbi Akiva says, just as there is 1 lulav and 1 etrog, no, so too only 1 adas and 1 arava.
right. So Rabbi Akiva,
I agree with Rabbi Ishmael.
what's that?
I agree with Rabbi Ishmael.
Why do you agree with Rabbi Ishmael?
No, Rabbi Akiva.
No, Rabbi Akiva disagrees.
Wow.
Rabbi Akiva says you only need 1 of each.
Oh, 1 of each.
So they said that Rabbi Ishmael said the same. And
No,
also, if they are 2 broken and only in body, only 1 is fine, so it's enough.
for the hadas, but he still says bring 3, even if 2 are broken. And he also says bring 2 from the arava. So that seems to imply that you need 1, 2, 3, 1. I think that's the way I wrote it up. Yes. So
Okay.
there's a machloket. Rabbi Akiva says, no, you just start with 1, 1, 1, 1. Why should you bring more of one than the other? Right? It just says just take 1, an example of each, and you're done. In this case, the halacha goes by Rabbi Ishmael, which is the 1, 2, 3, and 1 again for the etrog. And that's why when we get our lulavim for Sukkot each year, that's the pattern that we use.
And we will see from where that came the numbers. Why 2 and why 3?
Only if you want to study the Gemara.
Can you give us an introduction?
Not right now.
But, Rabbi.
I know. It's the frustration, right?
The topic, okay.
No, that'll be an assignment to expand.
You got to do your homework.
Yes, homework.
Do you want the halacha or do you want the sugya? Right? The halacha is the quick answer. The sugya is the discussion of how you get there.
No discussion.
Yeah. Well, then we need to have a Talmud study rather than a Mishnah study.
Can you email us?
Yes, I can give you some
Or the
excerpts.
place where to find?
Yes. All right. So chapter 3, Mishnah 5.
And each rug which is stolen or withered is invalid.
Big surprise. Same idea, but now we're talking about the etrog.
1 from an Asherah or a condemned city is invalid.
Again, not surprising. Number 3 is going to be something special.
Of orla or of unclean teruma, it is invalid.
Okay, so an etrog you can eat, right? The other 3 species you're not eating. I mean, yes, we can eat dates from the palm tree, but you can't eat the palm leaf, and we can't eat the hadas, and we can't eat the arava. So the etrog, we have to mention a few other special categories of prohibited varieties because it is an edible food. It's fruit. So an orla is a tree that is not yet old enough for us to take the fruit from, right? So if you take a baby tree's etrog, you're not allowed to use it for the mitzvah. You're not allowed to use it for anything, but especially you're not allowed to use it for the mitzvah. And truma is, of course, the gift of food that's given to the Kohanim, but if it has become ritually impure and so they can't eat it, you still can't use it for this either. Good.
And why do we use lulav, araf, adas, and trog? Is it Torah, the four Arab name, or
Min hashamayim, right? So the four species are not mentioned by name, but the descriptions of them are clear enough that the sages say that in the oral Torah that this is what the Torah is referring to. Yeah, it says the tree of the river and the beautiful tree, and the beautiful tree is considered to be the etrog. So it gives references, allusions to the type of tree, but it doesn't give us the botanical name.
And there wasn't any discussion about which one was. Everyone agree.
By the time of the Mishnah, certainly, yes.
And before, we don't have any.
There's always disagreements of splinter groups and sects and all of that, but I don't remember having any records of those. No. All right. On that same theme, though, about truma, we take the part 4.
Of plain teruma, he should not take it. But if he did take it, it is valid.
Okay, so clean truma means it's still fit to be eaten, and you're supposed to eat truma, right? That's what you're supposed to do. So therefore, it's dangerous to use the etrog because it might become ritually impure, it might become spoiled, and then you can't eat it for food, and now you're kind of wasting the truma. But it's still technically kosher to be used for the mitzvah. So it's better to not to and get a different etrog, but if you use it, you have done the mitzvah. Make sense? It's not prohibited, it's just not recommended. 5.
Of demai, doubtfully tithed.
You have to give the 2 opinions.
Bet Shammai says it's invalid, and Bet Hillel says it's valid.
Okay, so demai is something that has been, you're not sure whether it was tithed or not. Maybe it's coming from a person or a source that you aren't sure whether the person is careful with tithes. And so the question is now, can I use it? And Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel argue about these things. And Beit Hillel argues that in some circumstances we can, and this is one of them. He also says, for example, the poor can eat from the demai. So this is where Beit Hillel is more lenient than Beit Shammai on that topic. And then part 6.
Of second tithe, it should not be taken even in Jerusalem. But if he took it, it is valid.
Right, so the second tithe you would take and you would go to Jerusalem and you would eat it, much like the truma, although that didn't have to be in Jerusalem. And that's why you probably shouldn't be using it. But if you do use it, it is still a kosher lulav and you have done the mitzvah.
Rabbi, explain to me that. What do you mean by second tithe? Because the first tithe is when you're tithing from your land, right?
Yeah, you're tithing. So tithing is a lot more It's a lot more complicated than the modern usage of the word. A lot of people nowadays think tithing is 10% and I'm done. There are tithes you do in the first year and tithes you do in the third year and things like that. And then there are tithes that are given to people like the Kohan, the Leviim, who then also have to tithe another portion out of that. So this, it gets very complicated. I'm not going to go into it. Maybe we'll try that another time to really confuse it. What? We did some of that in Sanhedrin, yes. So yeah, if you just Google biblical tithes or rabbinic tithes, you can get charts that explain it all very neatly, much more easily than doing it verbally.
Because if you have land, then you got to make sure that your property is probably tithed. But I mean, nowadays, in modern,
exactly, had to make sure, yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
But basically, they're always more lenient than the Beit Shammai.
Almost always, yeah. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but yeah, we try to avoid perfect rules. There's always exceptions. Mishnah 6.
If a rash spread out on a majority of it, or if its piton is removed, if it is peeled, split, or perforated, so that any part is missing, it is invalid.
Okay, so because, and here we can give you a very clear source, because the Torah says that this is from the beautiful tree, that means the fruit has to be beautiful. And because it has to be beautiful, anything that will spoil it is a problem. So if it gets an ugly blotch going all over it, no longer. If the pitom, which I'm going to do my best to draw a lulav growing from a tree so that I can make this sort of clear. So this is the branch of the tree, and that's the stem of the lulav, the woody piece that connects it to the tree, like, you know, the stem of an apple or an orange. And at the very tip of the lulav, unlike many other fruits, there's a little pokey bit coming out.
Yeah.
That's where the flower used to be, the bud. It's just like if you ever look at the bottom of an apple, there's sort of like a little weird, like star-shaped looking thing. That's what's left of the flower from the apple. Because, you know, there was an apple blossom first, and then that blossom got grown into by the apple. Most other fruits, the blossom completely disappears when the fruit grows. But for an etrog, the little blossom leftover piece is still there, and we call that the piton. And if you break that off, it's no longer a kosher etrog.
That's right.
Unless it's from one of the subspecies of etrogim that lose their pitom naturally. There are some etrogim that are like an orange, where the stemmy flower bit drops off already as soon as the fruit grows, and therefore you don't have to worry about losing it. But if it comes with a pitom, it better keep its pitom, or else it's no longer a kosher etrog.
Yeah, that's why we were inspecting it when we had our service last week,
Yep.
just to make sure.
And that's why I always tell people, be very careful with it. Please put it back in the foam box carefully, etc., etc., etc. Good? Good. 2.
If a rash spread out on a lesser part of it,
So that's less than half.
if its stem was missing,
That's the woody part at the other end.
or if it's perforated but no part of it is missing,
Okay, so it's got a little hole or a poke here or there.
it is valid.
Right, then it is still a kosher etrog. And, you know, this is it's not terrible, right? It's still probably not the etrog you'd pick first off the shelf, but it is still kosher.
Which part is this thing?
The stem is the woody part that connects to the tree.
Ah,
So it's on the opposite end from the piton. It's the sort of brown piece that sticks up out of the back.
and the boil,
The what?
the boil.
The boil?
If a boil cover.
Oh, right, a boil, a rash. It's like a discoloration,
Ah,
or any other kind of skin peel deformity.
I've seen those too.
Well, yeah, fruit can go bad.
That's why we have to be so delicate.
Yes. Part 3.
An etrog which is black is an Ethiopian is invalid.
Right, so if you get an etrog, and I know we're used to seeing etrogs as being these bright neon yellow fruit, they actually come in many different shades and colors. And if you get one that is all black, nope, that one is not good for the lulav. On the other hand,
And they're from Ethiopia?
no.
Those
It's just
like-
using the term Ethiopian for the color.
Dark color.
Yeah.
Okay. An etrog which is green as a leek.
That's a debate. So if you can get etrog that's green, which, by the way, our etrog tree that grows outside the synagogue, most of its etrogim are usually green.
Oh.
They're just bright green, and they're cool, but they're not good for Sukkot.
Rabbi Meir declares it valid.
And
Rabbi Judah declares it invalid.
and Rabbi Judah actually wins that argument. So yeah, a green etrog is not kosher for Sukkot these days.
so why did we plant and want a tree actually we cannot use it?
From what I understood from the gentleman who planted it, you don't know what you're going to get. And the same tree can sometimes produce yellow and sometimes produce green. It has to do with the soil. It has to do with the air, atmosphere around it, and the season and the heat and all of those other things. So the etrogim farms that grow them for the purposes of the mitzvah, they have to do special things to make sure that all their etrogim come out yellow.
So can we do something to make the tree make a yellow tree? Because if you say that depending so many different
Speaking of
variables-
homework, if you want to find out how to make the etrog tree give yellow etrogim,
another homework.
yeah, well, you know, one's theoretical,
Many
one's
others
practical.
in this field. By the way, Michael says he's watching.
Oh, cool. So yeah, I am not a botanist. I'm not bad at growing things. I used to grow lots of good things as a kid with my grandmother. May she rest in peace. But I am not somebody you want to put in charge of the grove.
You know, my grandfather had because he was a farmer,
Yeah.
he had an amazing green thumb. And I mean, sometimes like the sweet potatoes were like this big. It was like outrageous, some of this stuff. But
Yes.
He was all excited. Obviously, we were all excited.
Some people have a talent. It's a gift. And if someone wants to find out how to make green etrogene yellow, let me know. Happy to help you, but I'm not the gardener. All right, chapter 3, Mishnah 7. We're halfway through. It's a long chapter.
The minimum size of an etrog, Rabbi Meir says the size of a nut. That's very small.
It is very small, but think, I mean, fruit starts off small on a tree. So if someone plucked it when it was still small, is it kosher or not? Rabbi Meir says, no problem.
Rabbi Judah says the size of an egg.
And Rabbi Judah says, no, it's got to at least be the size of an egg, which is still a pretty small etrog. But that is a kosher etrog.
Which one?
Oh, Rabbi Judah wins, yeah. It has to be at least egg-sized.
The maximum size is such that 2 can be held in one hand. The words of Rabbi Judah. Rabbi Josie says even one that can only be held with his 2 hands.
Okay, so now we're on the opposite side, right? So Rabbi Yehuda is saying that the etrogs can only be big enough that you can still get 2 of them in one hand. So you have to be able to fit 2 etrogim in one hand, which makes them quite small, right? You can't have these giant grapefruit-sized etrogim, which, by the way, our tree out there, the etrogim it grows are huge, right? Rabbi Yehuda says no. If you can't get 2 of them in one hand, then the etrog is too big and it is disqualified. Rabbi Yossi, he disagrees. He says even if you need 2 hands to hold the etrog, it's like a watermelon-sized etrog. You need to hold it with 2 hands. It's still kosher, and Rabbi Yossi wins. So,
where do we get ours, Rabbi?
We order them. So we order them through the conservative movement. They have a distributor that works with them. So we put our orders in, and then they ship them out to the synagogues.
Yeah, because they're always very nice. I gotta order them.
Sometimes they miscount the number of packages coming on. That's why we always order a few extra, because sometimes we'll like not quite get enough willow or not quite get enough myrtle. And this way we make sure we've got enough. So they just need to work on their counting.
So only yellow is not being kosher.
Yes. For the mitzvah. If you want to have a green etrog for lunch, no problem. Now, I don't know whether you know, but many people will take, because the etrog is the tree from a beautiful tree, will take great care in picking their etrog. You'll see people with magnifying glasses when you go to like a shuk in Israel, where you can buy them just, on the street, being absolutely perfect and making sure they pick the best possible one. And people will spend hundreds of dollars sometimes to buy an etrog, which is, in my opinion, a little over the top. And unless you've got
etrog, the tree or the fruit?
One fruit for the holiday of Sukkot.
Yeah, like the movie.
Yeah, Ushpizim, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they made it famous, but that's not only in the movie. I don't know if I think in the movie the guy spends like $1,000 or something. That's a huge amount. I'm not sure if that's a real number, but hundreds of dollars, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Now we get to Mishnah 8, where we talk about tying up the lulav, bringing back our topic.
They may not bind the lulav except with strands of its own species, the words of Rabbi Judah.
Okay, so the lulav needs to be one unit. And in order to make it one unit, we have to sort of tie it together. What do you use to tie it? Well, Rabbi Yehuda says the only thing you can use to tie the lulav together is the lulav, meaning from its own species of plant. So if you want to wrap it with something, you're going to have to wrap it with lulav species. And that's, in fact, what we do. Spoiler alert, halacha for quite a long time, is we use palm, long strips of palm that are woven together to make a binding to hold it all together. Now, technically, you could just take the palm and wrap it around, but we like to make it a little nicer. But that's not the only opinion. Other rabbis had different ideas.
Rabbi Meir says it may be bound even with a cord.
Just string it together, right? Wrap it up with a cord, good to go.
So why did Rabbi Yehuda want?
Like,
because both makes very sense for me. Like, why one?
So again, long version, read the Sugya, right? That's why we have a Gemara, is in order to give more depth. Short version, the idea is you are taking up the lulav, therefore the thing that holds it together should be part of the lulav, right? It shouldn't be, the holding together is essential, right? So that's the basic debate, is what's holding it together, is it being one unit important or is it extra? If it's important, then the thing that holds it together has to be the same species. If it's extra, then the thing holding it together can be whatever you want. And Rabbi Meir says, no, the holding it together could be just your fist. If you want to wrap something else around it, that's extra. But Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it has to be bound. It has to be bound to be used. Therefore, the thing that you're binding it has to be from the species. But Rabbi Meir is going to bring some proof that he's right, which is always helpful.
Rabbi Meir said it happened that men of Jerusalem used to bind their lulavs with strands of gold.
He said, hey, I've seen guys in Jerusalem and their lulav holders that held it all together, it was woven gold, which is pretty cool. But Rabbi Yehuda, or rather the sages, have an answer to that.
They answered him, but they bound it with strands of its own species underneath, the strands of gold.
Right. So saying, yes, but the thing that was really holding it together wasn't the gold. What was really holding it together was the regular species that held it together. And the gold was an added decoration around that under thing. So now you know, next time Sukkot comes around, you can get some gold rings to add a little bling to your lulav.
I would have thought that would be unacceptable because it's not natural. Well, gold is natural, but you know what I'm saying? It's not.
It's been processed, yes. But it is still allowed as a embellishment. You couldn't use it by the halakha to be what's holding it together. But if you wanted to add it as a decoration, technically it would be allowed. Now, I will say, I have never seen anybody do that. Everybody continues to just use the straight lulav with its own species.
It's interesting because they keep the same rationale of the building with sukkah.
Mm-hmm.
How you build a sukkah and what you can use here is exactly the same idea.
When you're building your lulav, exactly. Yeah, it's very consistent in that way.
Only natural, nothing made by men.
Not for the actual making of the lulav. I mean, that's what Sukkot is about, right? Is we are celebrating God's gifts to us, not what we have made. Right? We spend the rest of the year celebrating what we make. For this, we celebrate what God made and what God gave us. So yes, keeping our hands off of it.
That's very deep.
Yeah. Chapter 3, Mishnah 9. Let's use our lulav. Now that we've made it, what do we do with it?
And where in the service do they wave the lulav?
All right, so we know that we need to do the mitzvah of lulav by itself. But where also do we wave the lulav during the service? Right, so that you'll know, because you guys have all been here for Sukkot services, we have a point in the service after Shacharit where we take the lulav, we say the blessing, and we shake. And then there are other shakings that we do without saying the blessing.
So why do we repeat twice each sentence?
Because of this Mishnah.
You didn't say anything.
Oh, I mean about the repeating? Oh, that's a later Mishnah.
Oh,
we will get there. But why do we do the call and repeat? We'll get there, yes. But in terms of the why do we do it with the blessing? And then why do we also shake during Hallel? That is what this is talking about. So.
And it makes sense because it's Sukkot, this all that connection of the nature and we are in the hands of God. It's always makes sense.
It all fits together.
Shake and give thanks to God.
Exactly.
And bring salvation out.
So let's get the places out.
I give thanks to the Lord.
Right, Hodu Ladonai, right? That phrase. You're exactly right.
At the beginning and at the end, and oh Lord, deliver us.
Right, Hoshiana, right? Which exactly.
The words of Bet Hillel.
Mm-hmm.
Bet Shammai says, also at oh Lord, let us prosper.
Hatzlichana, right? But you may know, because you're reviewing the service in your mind, I can see, in Halacha L'Maseh, the Halacha that we now have, we know the winner of this debate, we do not shake on Hatzlichana, right? We only shake on Hoshiana. So Shammai is going to lose. But we're going to get a little more explanation first.
But why not?
But we're going to get more explanation first.
About why Beit Shammai lost?
Well, first of all, the proof that they lost. And then we can talk about why.
Rabbi Akiva says, I was watching Rabban Gamaliel and Rabbi Joshua, and while all the people were waving their lulavs at O Lord, let us prosper, they waved them only at O Lord, deliver us.
Right? Right. So everyone else was going around shaking at both verses, but Rabban Gamaliel and Rabbi Joshua only shook. Only shook for Hoshiana, for deliver us, not for Hatzlichana, for prosper us. And that's proving that, sure, the common people may shake all over the place, but the Hachamim, they know not to shake on Hatzlichana. Now, why not? Because Hatzlichana is it means to prosper us, right? Make us successful. Sukkot is when we are thankful that we have been successful, right? It's the end of the harvest, not the beginning. And so why are we shaking for more, right? We want God to give us more. We should be thankful for what we have at this moment. Yes, tomorrow, after Sukkot, we have to go out and start getting our fields ready, and then we're hoping God will give us a new good agricultural year. But right now, thankful for what you've got, right? So that is
So that should be the thing for Sukkot.
It is. Sukkot is Thanksgiving. I mean, that is why Thanksgiving is modeled after Sukkot. Every ritual in it is about making us feel gratitude for what we have already received. Now, except, what's the one thing we haven't received yet? Hoshiana, deliver us. That we're still waiting for. And so that you can still say, please, God, deliver us. All right, now, on to the timing.
One who has on a journey and had no lulav to take, when he enters his house, he should take it even if he is at his table.
Right, so you were out the whole day, and then you come back in the afternoon, and it's time for lunch, and you sit down and go, oh, that was such a long day, I just want to sit and have lunch. And then you go, wait a minute, today's still one of the days of Sukkot. You get up, you shake, and then you go back and have your meal.
Hey, that's not true. Because the Halacha L'Maseh is only during the day, not during the night.
This isn't saying night.
Say one from a short. Oh, okay, I don't know why.
Because,
assume that was night when you arrived.
In the modern world, we get home from trips at nighttime.
Yes.
Right. In the ancient world, you wouldn't want to be out walking at night so much.
Okay.
You know, no street signs, no flashlights, no cars, no headlights. You wanted to finish your journey before it was dark.
I know this because I have the same problem every year. Because I go work
before dawn,
early,
right?
And when I come at home, well, it's already night.
Right.
And I don't have the opportunity to share the lulav anything, or during the weekend.
Take the lulav to work.
You have to shake the lulav inside the Sukkot, right?
No.
No, any place.
Nope.
Any
You can shake the lulav anywhere.
Take
Yeah, shake the lulav anywhere. Okay.
it with you and shake it in the car.
Yeah. And after I will have a car accident.
I think she means like in the parking lot.
We clean the car after that.
You step outside the car, you shake it in the parking lot, you put it back in.
When I shake it, I have a big mess around me.
Oh my
of
God.
lips.
So outside your car, is that a problem? Because the parking lot is going to be dirty? Okay, we'll work on solving that for next year. Part A.
When you shake the lulav, you need to say only the bracha, or you need to say also the alel?
You only, for the mitzvah of lulav, it's just the bracha and one set of shakes. You don't have to do all of Hallel. Now, you should also be doing Hallel because it's the Chag, and when you do Hallel, you should also be shaking. But if you're talking about like emergency mitzvah shaking, the only time you've got, then just one with the bracha is enough.
Bracha.
Yep, exactly.
If he did not take the lulav in the morning, he should take it anytime before dusk, since the whole day is valid for taking the lulav.
Exactly. So to continue the question, as long as you can get home before
I'll do the
dusk,
same.
right? Get home before candle lighting, you're still okay. But once the day is done, the day is done. All right, Mishnah 10.
One who has a slave, a woman, or a minor read the Hallel to him, he must repeat after them what they say, and a curse be upon him.
Okay, let's deal with the halacha first, then we'll deal with the social issue. So the halacha issue here is, I don't know how to read, right? I'm illiterate. So how do I do Hallel? Maybe I have memorized my tefillot for the Amidah, or at the very least I have the themes, and then I can say the other words just from my own words, and that's enough for the Amidah or for Shacharit and things like that. But Hallel, that's Tanakh, right? I can't make up Hallel on my own because I'm quoting from Tehillim, from the Psalms. If I don't know how to read, what am I supposed to do?
That's a lot of pressure to go and study.
So you get your wife, you get a slave, you get a kid, they read, and they read a line, and you repeat it. They read a line, and you repeat it. And you should feel so ashamed of yourself, is what the Mishnah is adding here, right? Is that if you can't read from Tanakh, then what have you been doing, right?
We call this a teaching moment.
It's a teaching moment. But notice, the rabbis aren't saying, shame on you, you can't. They're saying, you do it like this, because you should still do it, but you should also learn how to read. But notice the stigma that Judaism put on somebody who had all the privileges, right? You've lived long enough, you were eligible for an education more than women were, and you have freedom in a way that a slave never did. And what have you done with those gifts, right? This is, I know that there's a way to read this that makes it feel very anti-women, anti-slaves, anti-children, and all of that. But really what this is anti-entitlement, right? If you grow up with all of the advantages, with all of the perks, with the best position you could be in your society, which is an adult, male, free man, you have no excuse for not knowing how to read. All those other three people, they have an excuse for not knowing. And yet they do and you don't, right? Don't sit there complaining, oh, I can't read, it's not fair. No, you do not get to complain. They could complain if they couldn't read. A slave could say, oh, my master never let me learn how to read. A woman could say, my father or my husband never let me learn how to read. A kid, they've never taught me how to. You have no excuse. Get out there, get a teacher, learn to read, stop it. It's really a great anti-whining and self-pity message.
I know the problem leaving the lulav in the car the whole day.
Yes.
Becomes dry because it's very hot inside. So become no kosher immediately after 2-3 days. Yeah,
so you get a very
because I
so
tried.
you get a short lulav, and you get a cooler, and you just put it in the cooler in the trunk.
Oh, good idea.
I'm going to keep finding you a way to do the mitzvah.
We're gonna
Remember, the lulav doesn't have to be this long.
Can I cut it?
You from the bottom, yes, not from the top. Right? You don't cut off the tip, but you can cut from the base. Yes.
My great grandmother
Mhm.
she didn't know how to read because she got married when she was 12 years old.
Right.
But she loved Psalms.
Hmm.
And she knew exactly which Psalms she wanted us to read to her.
Right.
And she would say, okay, go to this Psalm, this number. And that's exactly what she wanted to hear. I mean, it was amazing. Her memory was so bright. So it's like, yeah, there's no excuse
because he wasn't born a woman and he wasn't born a slave, and he's lived long enough that he should know, right? So that curse upon him also should really be a reminder of how important universal literacy was in the Jewish community. Now, yes, did they always give women or slaves the best education? No, of course not. We've talked before about cultural difficulties in the past. But the fact that for at least the majority of the male population, they believed that reading and literacy was an absolute requirement for a person. That was not universal in the world until very, very recently.
Yeah, because if not, you cannot read the Torah, you cannot do anything, you cannot pray.
Plenty of other religions, they don't teach that you need to read. The priest needs to read, the monk needs to read, the priestess needs to read, but you don't need to read. I'll tell you what it says. If you have questions, you ask me and I'll tell you. You just repeat after me or pray the way I tell you to pray and don't worry about reading. I mean, universal literacy in Europe, I mean, that took until like the 20th century in many countries. But Judaism was saying that universal literacy was an ideal that was pushed with very sharp social condemnation all the way back then.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. And we like our learning, and we like each person being able to learn, not having to rely on someone else. We use each other to sharpen, but I shouldn't have to get you to tell me what it says. Okay, part 2.
If an adult recited to him, he repeats after him only. Hallelujah.
Right, which is the normal sort of way. So
Why not a man?
So if an adult male is what they're talking about here is reading, then you're not likely to feel your shame as much, right? So if you are part of a community and the community's davening and maybe you can't read yet, okay, then that's not so bad. But if you have one of these 3 people reading for you, you are highlighting your inadequacy, because these 3 people, there is no reason why they should know how to read and you don't, because those the other categories, they have every disadvantage that you don't have, and so therefore you should feel ashamed. But another man or another community, with adults with you, you don't feel as ashamed, and therefore it's not highlighted.
But why do you still need to repeat, I say Hallelujah and not Amen?
Because there's not a bracha within Hallel. I mean, yes, and we're going to talk about that, the blessing before and after. But the end of each of the phrases, the end of each of the Tehillim is Hallelujah. So that's what he's saying, is he is doing the end phrase for the way the Psalms are written. Make sense? All right. 11.
In a place where the custom is to repeat verses, he should repeat.
Keep going.
Where the custom is to say them only once, he should then say them once.
All right. So there are certain parts of Hallel where we repeat. Right? We say each of those sentences twice. And then, there's other lines as well that we say twice.
Well, this is why we call a rabbi. He saves us during that time.
This is why we follow the Mishnah. Right?
That's why I ask.
I know. So what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says it is a custom. But what does the Mishnah also say? The minhag hamakom, the custom of the place, one should follow. Mm-hmm. So if you were in a sanctuary, if you were in a community where they only said it once, but normally you would say it twice, you would still only say it once. And if you're from a place where they always say it twice, or so they always say it once, but now you're visiting a place where they say it twice, you say it twice. There are a number of places where the halacha is according to the place, right? According to the custom of the people around you, that you will follow the way they do it. Because being part of the community is a very important value. All right? Okay. Similarly,
So
it's only the custom. And this next one is probably going to be a little more surprising.
Where the custom is to recite a blessing afterwards, he should recite the blessing afterwards.
Right? So we, of course, know that there's a blessing before Hallel, and we do a blessing after Hallel. That apparently was not universal in the days of Mishnah. They wouldn't necessarily all say a blessing afterwards. If they do, then you should say it too. If they don't, then you shouldn't say it. Notice they're not saying do whatever is the strictest version. They're saying follow the custom, that it's more important to follow the custom than to be stricter. Now, that's not the way to be part of the Jewish community. The best way is to follow the custom when there's a custom rule rather than an actual halachic rule. The halacha is follow the custom, not do the blessing.
What is for me strange for what they say here is
Mm-hmm.
because usually when you have an starting, you need to have an ending. So if you start with a bracha, you need to finish with a bracha in order to close.
For a bracha, right? Or for a set of brachot.
For a day.
For a set of brachot, right? Like for Shacharit, right? We have Yotzer Or at the beginning and then Ga'al Yisrael at the end. Or for Havdalah, right? B'rei Gafen at the end and Hamavdil, right? At the end. That's absolutely right. This is not a set of brachot. This is a mitzvah to say Hallel. And so we say Asher Kedishanu to start. And we technically don't need anything to finish. Do you say a blessing after you put on tefillin? Do you say a blessing after you've put on?
Yes, when I say all the prayer.
No. You say a blessing about tefillin after you put on tefillin. Do you say a blessing after you've put on your talit? Do you say a blessing after netilat yadayim? No, you do the mitzvah, or you say the blessing, you do the mitzvah. You say the blessing, you do the mitzvah of Hallel. So adding a blessing is actually more unusual. But because Hallel is supposed to elevate us, we need to say an additional note of thanks, an additional note of expression. And so the custom now, almost universally, is to say the blessing after as well. But at the time of the Mishnah, that wasn't universal. Let's go ahead and hit the general rule then.
Everything is dependent on local custom.
Okay, and then part 3, we're going to jump to a slightly different topic.
One who purchases a lulav from his fellow in a sabbatical year, the latter should give him the etrog as a gift, since one is not permitted to purchase it in sabbatical year.
Okay, again, the lulav is in a special category. The arava, the hadas, the lulav, all of these can be harvested before the sabbatical year begins. The etrog, you need a fresh one from this year. You're not allowed to use an etrog from 3 years ago. I have some, but you're not allowed to use it for the mitzvah because etrogim are great. They don't rot. They just shrivel up until they're nice and hard. So that means I have to be worried that if I'm getting an etrog, that this might be one from too recently. Now, if we get it right before the sabbatical year begins, that's okay. But if I get it from one that is the sabbatical year, that's not okay. And there's a window there where there could be a problem. Since I don't know from the person I'm purchasing it from, maybe they did it on the sabbatical year, maybe they didn't, I don't want to purchase the etrog. Instead, I want to purchase the lulav, and the etrog should be the free gift that comes with it.
So in other words, you're not held liable if it's a sabbatical year.
Correct. No, nor is he, as having sold something that was sabbatical year produce. Right? So it's the buy one, get one free. Right? Buy a lulav, an arava, and a hadas, get a free lulav. Or sorry, a free etrog. Getting late, my brain's going fuzzy. So that is okay. Whereas buying it directly leaves the money, which is going to possibly expire because of the sabbatical, hanging around as a problem. So this is the way to avoid creating a problem, or we're trying to prevent a problem from potentially arising. Because there's a simple solution: buy one, get one free, or buy 3, get one free.
So the whole land of Israel had the Shabbatic year at the same time.
Yes, yeah, it's not rotational.
That could be a solution. And you have
This turn,
lands,
yeah,
different fields. So yes, everyone knows count, and the 7 is Sabbatic. And this way you have always food.
And that's what farmers do in other parts of the world. They have crop rotations. And many farmers, they'll have different fields, and one year they'll let one field not be used of their own field. So it's not even like different farmers take turns. It's just, each farmer does it. That's not the way of Torah. Torah says that the entire land rests. Right? So it's a difficult standard to meet, but the rabbis at least have a way to prevent with Sukkot us from tripping up over this. And I think we're going to have to leave it there because we still have 12, 13, 14, 15 to go through. And there's no way we're going to finish that through tonight. But we're going to be talking about how often we shake the lulav, what about Shabbat, and other topics. So we'll carry on with that next week, and then we'll move on to chapter 4.
So
we were doing so well at hitting one chapter a night, but this chapter is just a little too long.
And